Introverted intuition is a lot easier to understand than what most people think. So if you're from the typology community, you're interested in socionics, MBTI, you know what I mean by introverted intuition. I'm going to break down NI, all right, which is short for introverted intuition, in a way that makes it a lot easier to take in, and by giving you a very, very simplified example of what it is, and then we can talk about how it later gets a little bit more complicated. I really want to try my absolute best to not make the concept of NI seem mysterious, because I don't believe it's as mysterious as it's actually presented. We see displays of introverted intuition NI all over. All right, it's basically in anything to do with symbolic language. Themes are all expressed through introverted intuition. Now, where things might get a little bit unclear is when you look at people with high NI on individual basis and the way that they express their NI. That's where it gets really, let's just say, nuanced. So I want you guys to think of this, all right? What relationship, or should I say, what's the link between the following items, all right? A lighter, water bottle, wood, and coal. Now, on their own, each one of them seems unrelated to the other. Now, you might already be thinking, okay, no, it actually doesn't make sense. I'm seeing a certain pattern or logic here. Now, what NI does is that, well, let me just say this. The items that I just mentioned are all items that you take outdoors on a camping trip or barbecue or whatever. They're random, concrete, individual items. They seem random, right? But they're individual items. And you could group those items, those sensory, physical things together. And when people look at it, they form a concept in their head. Oh, these are the items for going outdoors. This is an extremely simplified version of what NI does, is that NI is the abstract aspect of the organizing of the concrete items. So it takes all the physical items out there and it says, okay, what box do all these items fit into on an abstract level? It looks at the experiences, the common experiences that people have, extroverted sensing, what other people are doing. It's a set of pool of experiences. It tries, as Jung would put it, condense those experiences into some sort of symbolic form, outdoor activity. Now, you could say, well, let's transform the concept of outdoor activity. Let's give it a symbol. And the symbol could be a stick figure of a person walking with a stick to represent outdoor activity or hiking or whatever the symbol happens to be. You can take that symbol, and the moment you see that symbol, you associate that symbol with the following items that I just mentioned. That's an extremely simplified version of what the NISE axis does. Now, when we take a look at it further, we start to understand this. Okay, introverted intuition really is all about themes. All right, for example, Halloween's coming up. What is Halloween? We all have an abstract idea or concept of what Halloween is and the implications of that and what it entails. Then when we think of Halloween, we think of, people putting makeup on in their face, people trying to look scary, people using like red dye to make it look like blood or a skull or whatever. We can list a bunch of concrete items. And all these concrete items, now on their own, they seem random, they seem like they have nothing to do with each other, but when you put them together, all of a sudden, out of those concrete items coming in together, you get a concept that emerges out of the extroverted sensing. Right, and that's really what it is. NI is, the word emerging is actually a great way to describe NI because it looks at physical things that are happening outside, and then from the physical observations that it sees, a concept from that emerges in the mind's eye. And what happens in the mind's eye, we can actually communicate that to other people, and that's how we get common symbol. Again, really simplified versions of NI that we see every day. We see NI in our everyday living, right? It's not as far out there and mysterious as people actually think about it. When you see the sign of a power button, we all know what that looks like. When we look at that sign, that symbol, we associate, oh, this is a power on off switch sort of thing, right? Or when we see signs on the street, there's a set of communication. It's something's being communicated through that symbol that informs what behavior we should be showing extroverted sensing. Because at the end of the day, behavior really is extroverted sensing. It's what other people are doing and the activities that are happening in the concrete external world. And here's what socionics does, which I think is really smart. It talks about how extroverted sensing is discrete while NI is continuous. And it makes sense when you think about it, because think of the list of items that I mentioned earlier. I mentioned a lighter and a water bottle. Now those two things are the opposite. Like a lighter starts fire, water can be used to stop fire, right? On their own, they seem completely opposite or maybe even contradictory. But when you put them together in context with the other items, now all of a sudden it starts to make sense. Okay, there's a theme emerging here. These are the physical sensing things that are associated with the concept of outdoor activity. Now, where things get complicated and where things start to scale is it really happens once you start to understand the implication of what this means for an individual. So people with high NI, they will start with the themes first, the invisible box. Let's call it the invisible box. That's what it is. They'll start with developing some sort of theme or invisible box, and then they'll seek to start to fill all, only immerse themselves in the concrete environment that fits in with their invisible box. That's introverted intuition, NI. You see this a lot, especially with the NI leads. They only engage with concrete reality insofar as it fits into their NI invisible box. Another way you could see it is they say, okay, here's the concept that I have in my mind, here's the theme, here's the pattern, here's how I want my life to go. And theme itself it implies a sort of timeline based, but it's not always connected to a timeline. This is where I kind of have a little bit of an issue with socionics solely equating the concept of time with NI. I mean, it can be, but it's not always like that. But anyways, the NI leading type will see a specific box that they want their life to fit into, a theme, and they will seek to, from then, start to piece all the concrete items, pick them out in order to fit them into that NI. Now, this can be either the way that they want to experience their life, like, oh, I am X type of person, or this is the theme of my life, so these are the things I should be doing. Or it could even be down to information and ways of comprehending bodies of information and knowledge. For example, reading a bunch of books or a bunch of information and then understanding the overall pattern and using some sort of symbol, not always a symbol, but sometimes it could just be simply simplifying the concepts or the information into an easy to understand format. So what NI and SE types can do, especially the NI leading types, is they can enter into a field of knowledge or study that has a lot of different things going on, a lot of complicated things, a lot of extroverted sensing information, absorb all that information, and then distill that information or communicate it in a simplified way. But because NI can be so, it sees the link that most people don't see, right? I'd say this, a lot of the times NI can see things that most people don't see, or see the emerging trend or pattern or the invisible box that things are fitting into that other people don't see. And the reason why other people don't see it, that the NI type sees, either accurately or inaccurately, they might be right or wrong about it, but the reason why they see it is because they say to themselves, well, they understand the connection and the relationship between the physical items. While most people, so for example, if we were to flip this and say an SE lead, they do not see the NI aspect. And because, like I said, now, one amazing thing that socionics does is it calls extroverted sensing discrete, while NI is continuous. People who are seeing it strictly and only from an SE lens, they see individual items, this item and that item and that item, and they're not really able to say, okay, here is the connection between all these items and this is how they fit into this box. They're not aware of the concept of an invisible box or the idea to even try to fit the concrete items into an invisible box. Now, of course, I'm exaggerating a little bit. Even the SE leads with NI suggestive know that there is such thing as an invisible box. It's more like the NI polars that don't know, but the NI suggestive, they do know, and they greatly value this theme, this trend, this invisible box NI, and they value it and they seek to actually try to be good at NI. That is actually a thing that not a lot of people know, but it's a fact, especially when you look at their behavior. Now, let's go back to the topic of how this gets complicated. How this gets complicated is this, is that NI because, especially in the high NI types, at its core, it's subjective. And by subjective, I mean for each individual person, how they come up with the process behind linking things together is something that nobody, not even the person themselves with NI, is able to understand. It just happens as a consequence of circumstances or conditions that they've gone through, unwillingly or willingly. And that's another thing. They can willingly develop themselves. I mean, the concept of self-development is having control over the way you form and develop. But I don't want to get into that. That's a little bit different. But the point is this, is that NI, at the end of the day, it's the thing that links concrete item. So in my opinion, based on this, how I interpret this information, I'd say NI is the source of meaning. And by meaning, as in it tells a story or gives context to the concrete items. So SE looks at the items discretely, doesn't see a connection between various sets of items. But NI is the one that puts it together, pieces it together, and gives it a story, and it sort of like packages it and gives it like a little organization, I guess you could say, because NI is organizing. And I know this comes from objective personality, but it's actually one thing that they get right, is that NI really is about not necessarily organizing concepts, but also organizing concrete things and information into a neatly fitted NI vision or NI worldview of seeing the world. All right, so that is basically how NI works, how the NI-SE axis works, that is. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment down below. Peace out.